Ma Anandamayi, her so-called birth and beginnings. Can one talk of the birth of someone who in her lifetime itself was a legend? Human beings and everything that has a name and form are born, live and die, and then are reborn according to their so-called karma, the inexorable law. Our thoughts and actions fashion our future lives, and the physiological and social conditions in which we were born are the result of our past life. This, to use a technical term, is called the prarabdha karma. However, nothing of this holds true as far as Sri Ma Anandamayi is concerned, because as she has expressed many times, she did not have any past life, and if she took a human form, it was not to reap the fruit of any karma, but in response to a collective aspiration of human beings. Nonetheless, if we limit ourselves to the empirical aspects of things, we will say that she, who later became Ma Anandamayi, a name given to her by Sri Yotish C. Roy, better known as Baiji, one of the main disciples of Ma, that she was born on 30th of April, 1896, in the village of Kiora, in the district of Tripura, in East Bengal, which is now Bangladesh. Her father, Sri Bipin Bihari Bhattacharya, a Brahmin of the renowned Kashyapa clan, was loved and respected for his spirit of detachment. Her mother, Srimati Moksha Sundarai Devi, had all the noble qualities which make the Hindu woman the guardian of ancient tradition. Before and after the birth of the child, the mother often dreamt of gods and goddesses coming to visit her humble dwelling and illuminating it with their splendor. Curiously, the infant, on coming into the world, neither cried nor made any sounds that newborns usually make. On this subject, Ma later remarked laughingly, "What reasons did I have for crying? I was looking at the mango tree through the cracks in the wall." That is, she's pointing to the fact that the spaces in the bamboo wall of the hut. Ma also recalled something which took place some days after her birth, which has been verified. This allows us to conclude that she was born with full consciousness. The newborn infant was named Nirmala Sundari. While growing up, she proved to be quite an extraordinary child, never telling lies and obeying her elders so scrupulously that they were quite disconcerted at times. Her kindness and tact earned her the friendship of everyone. Her chosen hobby was the chanting of religious hymns, or kirtan, with her father. She was married at the age of 13 to Sri Ramana Mohan Chakravarti from the village of Almora in East Bengal, who later came to be known as Baba Bolanath. It was an unusual marriage because the husband realized very soon that his spouse was not an ordinary being, and his rapport with her was one of veneration mixed with fear. Later, she gave him initiation, and he became a sannyasi under the name of Tibetananda. What about sadhana? I use the word sadhana in inverted commas because the term is not proper as far as Ma is concerned. She had affirmed many times and so categorically that there was no room for doubt that she has always been the same since childhood, and that the changes in her demeanor were only superficial, not in any way affecting her real state. As for sadhana, Ma used the phrase asatna kai kel, a game of sadhana, that is, an attitude similar to that of an actor consciously playing a part, or that of a doctor who takes the BA examination to amuse himself. For the game to be complete, as Ma herself said, it was necessary that her mind be covered momentarily by a veil of ignorance, but which never affected the state of perfect realization in which she always lived. This so-called sadhana began with the diksha, or ritual initiation, on the night of the Julan Purnima, the full moon preceding Krishna's birthday. Ma described all the details of this initiation, which resembled completely to the minutest ones to the ritual of ancient India. However, it was done at a very subtle level, visible only to those endowed with an astral vision, and the guru was none other than the invisible and omnipresent divine power. Then commenced a sadhana of such hallucinating and vertiginous proportions that even the most daring among yogis would not have been able to sustain it. Ma told us that all the methods of sadhana, ancient and modern, from their alpha to their omega, to their culmination, were practiced by her, some over a period, and others like a film moving at a dizzy speed in the space of a few seconds. The reason for these astonishing spiritual acrobatics? Ma gave it to us, saying, no matter who the sadhak, the practitioner of a spiritual path, was who asked her for advice, no matter what was the experience he described to her, she could help him and direct him like a guide who indicates to the traveler the landmarks of the route that he knows perfectly. Over several years, all kinds of extraordinary manifestations appeared through the person of Sri Ma Anandamayi. Bhakta, bhava, the state of ecstasy, yogic powers, and the states of samadhi. These appeared mainly when she was listening to kirtans. It then seemed that a divine power was taking possession of her body and making it move with a supernatural grace. She danced, ran towards the place where the kirtan was being held, sometimes animated by an undulating movement, at other times with a speed almost impossible to follow with the eyes. Sometimes her body rolled on the ground like a leaf being blown about by the wind. Again, at other times, she stood balanced on tiptoe with an extraordinary grace, or danced. She often used to become unconscious of the external world and to remain immersed in the happiness of samadhi for hours. It was during this period that her yogic powers, which seemed to defy all natural laws, manifested themselves. One day her body retracted to the point of becoming a minuscule mass of skin covered by clothes. At other times her stature took on excessive proportions. One day she was surrounded by a luminous halo which dazzled all eyes. And towards 1925 began the regimen which restricted her food without her health undergoing any change. For example, during a certain period, she took only 3 mouthfuls of food on Monday and Thursday, and for the remaining week, she took just 9 grains of rice. Then, during another period of several months, she took just 1 grain of rice per day without losing any weight. All these astonishing, indeed disconcerting to the Western mind, manifestations seem to enter into the sadhana khel, which Ma Anandamayi spoke of. I met Ma only at the beginning of 1951, that is, at the time when these extraordinary manifestations were over. I have described them by hearsay, according to what I have read and to the declarations of Sri Ma herself. But the most extraordinary manifestation of the personality of Sri Ma was also the most touching. She was perfectly natural and human, supremely human. As for personality, I use the term personality more as a concession to common language than in the actual sense of the term. Because to have a personality, one must also have an ego, something which was totally absent in Sri Ma Anandamayi. Then again, it is a question of describing an apparent personality, that is, what it seems to be from the point of view of the spectator still immersed in duality. But this is not as simple as it seems at first, because when the impersonal takes on the aspect of a person, it varies according to the spectator who imposes on it his limitations, which he has drawn from conscious or subconscious aspirations. In other words, it is not a question of describing here the apparent personality of Ma Anandamayi in an objective manner, which is impossible, but of describing her as she appeared to be in the eyes of the person who writes these lines. Imagine thus, a lady of 80 years, but who looks much younger, with long black hair falling over her shoulders when not tied up in a chignon on the top of her head, and who is always dressed in an impeccably clean white sari. To say that this woman is beautiful would be an offense to her, as she insisted so much on the evanescence of all things of this earth. It is true, however, that in the days of yore, as is evident from photographs and my own memories, her extraordinary beauty evoked the beauty of the beyond. Perhaps it is for this reason that her followers, who, like many Hindus, think that physical beauty is one of the attributes of the divine when he descends to earth, saw the incarnation of the Divine Mother in her. There was something remarkable about the fine, aristocratic face with eyes that looked straight at you. No one I knew could sustain that look for long without lowering the head, because it expressed a gentleness in which there was not the slightest trace of weakness or compromise, and it evoked the immutable consciousness which is the source and the goal of all our aspirations, and also the terror of our ego. It is not just that look that I wish to speak of, nor is it just the expression of the lower lip which revealed an indomitable energy, which was in marked contrast to such a feminine face. I wish to speak of something else also. Ever since my first contact with Ma, I was struck by her extraordinary ability to alter the features of her face. Sometimes it seemed that through some kind of miming, she identified herself with her interlocutor. At other times, as if in the wink of an eye, she guessed the fundamental affective chord in a disciple, and she appeared to him in the aspect that was most dear to him. Sometimes I have seen her take on the bearing of a young, radiantly beautiful girl of 20. Then a quarter of an hour later, the wrinkled and tired visage of an old woman, or the virile expression of a young man, or yet again the face, gestures, and silvery laugh of a child. She spoke often without economizing on words. Her voice, with its musical timbre, went well with her personality, in which everything spelt harmony. For those who had the ears to listen, she only spoke a few words, each one of which was of profound importance, and one had to know how to weigh them. For others, she sometimes spoke with an abundance of words. She had only elementary primary education, and yet she could discuss the very difficult metaphysical subjects with the great pandits of Benares. In a few simple words, she could solve complicated philosophical problems, and often her answers carried the conviction of an evident fact, because her wisdom did not come from books, but from a direct vision of the truth. What was most striking about the personality of Sri Ma Anandamayi was the radiance of love, a love pure and luminous that ennobled all whom it touched, divinizing them and giving a new meaning to individuals and things. But better than that, she knew through I know not by what mysterious alchemy how to let flow the fountain of divine love that is within each of us. For those who had been touched by her grace, the spiritual path became very easy to follow, for she gave them the wings of divine love, without which even the Vichara Marga, the path of knowledge and self-inquiry, It's nothing but a sterile intellectual exercise. Another remarkable feature of the personality of this great being was her extremely refined psychological sense and her extraordinary ability to manage human beings. She knew how to pull the strings of the human puppets that we are, yet the strings responded to a hand which knew divine compassion and which wanted to transform the puppets into free and conscious beings. Sri Ma was born, brought up, and continued to live surrounded by the rites of an ancient Hindu tradition. She recommended and advised their practice to those whose spiritual practices were supported by religious life. But she herself soared majestically above all rituals, like a mountain eagle soars above the plains. She did neither puja nor meditation, nor did she take part in any religious practice, unless it was an exceptional one in which she participated like a mother, pretending to be interested in the plays of her children. In fact, she could do all that because she took a firm support from the immutable rock of the Absolute.